Mandy Hansen is my name. The complex and sometimes tense connection between my sister Ashley and I, as well as the distorted sense of affection that permeates our family dynamics, are chronicled in this story. It is clear from looking back on the past that complexity was always there. We were under constant pressure to live up to our parents' expectations and fulfill their duties. The strict expectations made of me stood in stark contrast to the unwavering affection shown to my sister. Despite living under the same roof, Ashley and I frequently felt as though we were in completely separate worlds. I was just 5 years old when Ashley came into the world. Our parents regarded her as a very unique child from the beginning. She was clearly a little different from other kids. Her incorrect social responses, her outbursts of passion, and her seeming indifference to other people's feelings were all quite evident. Our parents flatly refused to accept the doctor's diagnosis of a slight developmental abnormality. Almost like a chant, my mother would insist, "Ashley is special. Those around her are the ones who fail to comprehend, often." I so unavoidably became responsible for taking care of my unique sister. I would help Ashley with her schoolwork as soon as she got home from school, help her control her emotions, and frequently mediate her contacts with peers. My mother couldn't take care of Ashley after work because of her hectic job, and my father would stifle any criticism I had by telling me, "You're the older sister." I still remember a specific event during my best friend's 13th birthday celebration. It happened when my friend's grandparents gave her a Barbie home, and she accepted the gift with a shy but sincere smile. It was then that Ashley laughed mockingly. The room became cold. "How silly! Aren't we too old to still be playing with toys like that?" My friend's eyes filled with tears, while the other kids displayed symptoms of bewilderment and uneasiness. I escorted Ashley home right away, but our parents' reaction was, unsurprisingly, contemptuous. "You need to be more understanding of Ashley. How could you, as her sister, feel embarrassed by her?" After then, a big change started to happen inside of me. The harsh realities of our existence and my parents' strict expectations caused me to feel more and more conflicted. Throughout high school, the tension between my obligations to Ashley and my goals for my own life grew more intense. In order to escape the pressures of my family and Ashley, I turned to my studies. I volunteered on the weekends, participated in extracurricular activities after school, and spent endless hours at the library. I painstakingly came up with excuses to spend as little time as possible at home. Ashley, however, was always trying to get in my way, interfering with my social plans, club activities, and even library study sessions. Despite my repeated requests for her to stop, she even tried to make friends with my friends, sharing contact details and attempting to gain their favor. Her attempts continued in vain. Additionally, Ashley frequently played the victim in front of our parents, screaming that Mandy doesn't play nicely with me. Believing her story, they constantly told me not to exclude Ashley, completely ignoring my need for time and privacy. My ultimate escape became going to college. Think about Ashley. She needs you. My mother begged me tearfully when I was admitted to an out-of-state college on a full scholarship, but I refused to pass up the chance to escape the stress of the previous 18 years. I moved into the dorm with just one bag and rarely went home, even on holiday, enjoying the freedom to breathe without restraint. My horizons were expanded by college life. In my psychology studies, I studied theories of family interactions, and in counseling sessions, I discovered important things about myself. Above all, I got a first-hand glimpse at what positive interpersonal connections should look like. I realized for the first time that the family relationships I had been used to were really strange. Jeff was sitting next to me as I was waiting for an interview at an investment bank in the fall of my sophomore year. "Nervous?" he asked with a soft grin, While he was dressed in formal attire, his manner was so kind that it helped to ease my nervousness a little. He introduced himself when I answered. After our interviews were over, Jeff waited for me outside. He's Jeff Baker, an undergraduate older than me, majoring in economics, who also attended my college, although we had never met as we went to different campuses. How about some coffee? We discussed our academic endeavors and future goals over coffee at a local cafe. As our discussion progressed, we found many commonalities between our upbringings, such as challenging parent-child interactions, a love of money, and a strong focus on individual autonomy. Family can sometimes be a burden, he said, and I became quite tearful. I talked to someone about family matters that I had previously kept to myself for the first time. Jeff listened carefully as I talked about my difficult relationship with Ashley, my parents' unreasonable expectations, and the extreme loneliness I had experienced. I had never seen him respond like this before. "You haven't done anything wrong." Those words were like a salve, relieving the weight that had been pressing down on my heart for so long. We quickly started dating after that experience as our connection blossomed organically. Over time, late-night phone conversations, weekend coffee meetings, and library study sessions all became essential parts of our partnership. Jeff's role in my life grew more and more important over time. We both had the good fortune to land jobs at the same esteemed investment bank after graduating from college. Despite being allocated to different departments, we were really happy and convenient to be able to work in the same building. Jeff proposed to me in a very understated way 2 years after we started dating. The words, "I want to walk through life with you," were genuine and emotional, without any extravagant special effects or theatrical displays. The first obstacle we had when we started the wedding planning process was having to tell Ashley and my parents we were engaged. Their response was unsurprisingly unenthusiastic, but Jeff remained at my side, unflinching in his support. "Why didn't you consult us? Ashley will be upset. Couldn't you have waited a little longer?" "It's your life, Mandy. No one else has the right to make these decisions for you." Jeff and I bought a charming suburban home after we were married. There, we delighted in telling each other about the happenings of each day and in the simple joys of gardening on the weekends. A few years into our marriage, when the evenings came to an end, we were ecstatic to welcome our son, Wesley, into the world. To me, our existence felt like a dream come true, even if it could have appeared normal to others. I happened to come across the announcement of Ashley's engagement one day while perusing a Facebook group chat. Ryan, who was 15 years her senior, was the guy she was to wed. Many of my former friends were in this group, some of whom Ashley had reportedly been making an effort to keep up rather obsessive ties with while I was away. My phone rang one evening when I was getting settled. I hesitated for a while, but I finally answered the phone when I saw Mom on the screen. My mother said, "Hello, Mandy." "Good. I finally reached you," with her usual kindness in her voice. I sat down on the sofa in the room's corner and said, "I have something important to discuss. Do you have a moment?" "Yes." There was a minute of stillness before my mother spoke. "Well," stopping as she chose her words carefully, "it's about Ashley's wedding." I said bluntly, "It's about money, isn't it?" "Oh, you knew," my mother said, her voice a little more upbeat. She started by saying, "Yes, it's a difficult situation," before going into great length about the difficulties they were encountering. She described how my father's business was struggling, how their mortgage payments were a problem, and that Ashley's wedding was expected to cost at least $30,000. "But it's a family tradition," she said firmly. "Traditionally, parents cover the costs of their children's weddings. Everyone paid for our wedding and yours too." My response was, "Yes, I remember." There was an uneasy moment when I said, "I didn't have a ceremony, just took photos, so it wasn't as expensive as what Ashley's will be." I let out a sigh and asked quietly, "So, how much do you need?" "Well," my mother said, hesitating and carefully selecting her words. "First, about $115,000. That's for the reservation fee for the venue, the payment for the dress." "And then you've already decided that I'm going to pay, haven't you?" I said. My mother said, "But Mandy," in a strained, urgent voice, "you have a good job, right? Working at an investment bank, earning a high salary. It's for Ashley's sake. You should be able to do this much for your sister." I let out a long breath. "It's a family obligation, a tradition." Calmly, "Please, Mom," I interrupted. "What if I don't pay?" My mother started crying. "Mandy," she said, her voice trembling with emotion, "don't say that. We're really in trouble. It's Ashley's dream wedding. It's supposed to be the most important day of her life. Please, Mandy, don't destroy the family. You know Ashley is special. She needs this wedding. You should understand." I closed my eyes and inhaled deeply and slowly. "I understand," I said in a low voice. "I suppose I'll pay then." "Oh, Mandy," my mother said with such delight. "You are a good child. I will give you the bank account number and the wedding planner's contact information tomorrow." I gave a concise yes, and immediately hung up. I spent hours that night lost in contemplation, staring up at the ceiling. My phone rang on a seemingly ordinary Tuesday night as I was returning to my car after completing my supermarket shopping. It was Kelly, one of my best friends from college. "Mandy, did you receive Ashley's wedding invitation?" I stopped, surprised. "What are you talking about?" Uncertainty trailed off Kelly's voice. "Ashley is getting married. This morning, I got the invitation." A shiver went through me in that moment. I had not been told that my own sister's wedding was coming up. I responded, "Hold on a second," and threw my shopping bags into the vehicle. Kelly said, "Yes, it seems so," in a hesitant tone. "Did anyone else receive an invitation?" "Emma and Lucy received theirs too. We all assumed you had received yours as well." My phone began ringing later that night from many pals. The same elaborate golden invites had been sent to each of them. October 15th at St. Mary's Church. Dress code, formal. Reception at the Grand Hotel Ballroom. As my friend's information poured in, it became evident that Ashley had purposefully left me out of her wedding invitations. Rather, she had invited every acquaintance of mine. I tried to contact Ashley many times, but each time I was met with her voicemail, leaving me feeling confused, exploited, and heartbroken. In an attempt to get an explanation, I also contacted my mother, but the result was the same. They had asked me to pay for a large amount of the wedding costs, so it seemed like a cruel betrayal. Decided, I took action. On the day of the wedding, I made the decision to reveal the truth to everyone. I carefully pretended to comply with my parents' and Ashley's desires from the following day on, omitting to mention that I hadn't received an invitation. I carefully went over the expense estimates, made the necessary arrangements, and kept up the appearance that everything was going according to plan. On the inside, though, I was making my own strategy. Kelly gave me another call the night before Ashley's wedding. She said in a worried tone, "Mandy, what will you do tomorrow?" "Are you really going to Ashley's wedding?" "I will be there," I said firmly, letting out a deep sigh. "But not as a guest. After all, I wasn't invited to begin with." I could hear Kelly taking a breath over the phone. "What do you mean?" I said, "It's time to reveal the truth," in a composed but determined manner. I told her about the atrocities that Ashley and my parents had done to me over the years, as well as the wedding expenses. This time, parents have traditionally paid for their children's weddings as part of our family's traditions. However, they attempted to place that weight on me by claiming that they were short on funds. "They made you pay for the wedding but didn't invite you? How can such a terrible thing happen?" cried Kelly, shocked. "Yes," That's exactly what they did, I said, grinning sourly. They wanted to take everything from me and then exclude me completely. Well, if that's their wish, I'm prepared with a response of my own. I called Kelly to stop the call and then contacted another person to talk about the matter in more detail. I answered, "Yes, thank you," and hung up. After that, I went to my closet. I had to choose what I was going to wear tomorrow. I chose to wear casual pants and a basic top, which is completely inappropriate for a wedding. But that decision was exactly what I wanted to do. While I was preparing these things, Jeff entered the room. He looked at what I was getting ready and nodded silently. He said quietly, "Are you okay?" with worry in his voice. "Yes," I said as I completed getting the clothing ready for the next day. I said, "Tomorrow will be the day when everything comes to an end," with a tone that was both determined and nervous. My pulse was pounding with eagerness even before the sun rose. 6 a.m. was displayed on the glowing digital clock on our bedside table. Since the wedding was scheduled to start at 10 a.m., the drive to the selected location, St. Mary's Church, would take around an hour. I was looking through my phone when I saw that it was overflowing with messages from my pals, which meant that they were already moving. They had begun to carry out their own strategy without my knowledge. I walked out into the silent, quiet town wearing trousers and a basic top. When Jeff took the wheel, I was absorbed in my thoughts and staring out the window. It became clear to us that we weren't the only early comers as we arrived at the chapel. The parking area next to the entrance was already full of vehicles. I could hear the wedding crew chatting frantically on the phone. Yes, we can't proceed with the preparations as the funds haven't been confirmed." The air was filled with their strained voices. As I became aware of the consequences of my actions, a little smile appeared on my face. It had eventually been discovered that the wedding expenses had been canceled. The scene that emerged as soon as I entered the chapel was quite unusual. Usually the location would have been beautifully adorned by now, but the room was glaringly empty, where white rose bouquets, delicate ribbons, and other decorations should have been used to create a somber ambiance. The crew was running around frantically, and I could clearly hear Ashley's shouts of concern coming from the direction of the wedding suite. Anxiety was evident in my parents' pale and trembling faces as they engaged in a lengthy talk with the event planners. My eyes then landed on my pals, who were wearing remarkably unusual wedding clothing. Wearing a vibrant green ball gown, Kelly looked stunning. Emma looked stunning in an outfit with vivid red sequins. Lucy's bright blue tutu skirt made her stand out. It was obvious that their attire was inappropriate for a conventional wedding. When Kelly saw me coming, she said, "Mandy?" and waved. Kelly's voice was low when I joined them. "We decided to make a statement about Ashley's long-standing behavior. She has consistently tried to intrude into our friendships, and now, by inviting us but excluding you, she has crossed the ultimate line." There was a startling, piercing scream that interrupted her explanation. "What have you done?" Ashley stood far away in her wedding gown, her eyes full of tears and her makeup caked. My mother looked almost as upset behind her. My mother stammered, trying to find the correct words. "Mandy, why would you cancel the payment for the wedding?" The church doors suddenly sprang open, and the entire public started to stream in. As they absorbed the tumultuous spectacle in front of them, confusion was evident on their faces. I inhaled deeply before moving forward into the middle of the church to speak to the assembly. When I said, "Ladies and gentlemen, I have something important to share," the church became silent. "There is a truth about this wedding that no one knows." I went on, drawing everyone's interest. Ashley yelled, "Stop!" in an attempt to cut me off, but I proceeded. "I am Ashley's sister. However, I was not invited to this wedding. Instead, My parents insisted that I bear the financial burden because it is our family tradition. The throng, processing what I had spoken, murmured incredulously. I explained, citing specific upsetting incidents from my past, including the incident at my 13th birthday party, various problems during my school years, and situations when I was just about to enter college. For years, I have been subjected to emotional manipulation by my parents and Ashley. From my childhood, I was prodded into taking care of Ashley and was made responsible for managing her inappropriate behaviors, I said. With every tale I told, the participants' faces changed, demonstrating a deeper comprehension of the circumstances. And now, they demand that I cover the costs of this wedding while simultaneously excluding me from it. This act is the culmination of their pattern of behavior over the years. As the situation's reality sunk in, the mood in the chapel grew quite tense. Ashley exclaimed, "It's all lies, all of it," as she was overcome with emotion. Many of the guests, however, had started to realize the full scope of the situation by this point. My mother and Ashley screamed at me, but they were crying. They were certain that I had planned this scheme with my pals, so they accused me of doing it. "How could you do such a terrible thing? You ruined my special day, to conspire with your friends in such a manner. You have betrayed Ashley, betrayed the family," they said. My parents couldn't believe it, but my pals adamantly insisted that I had nothing to do with their original idea. Our extravagant outfits are an overt symbol of protest against Ashley's persistent inappropriate behavior. Mandy was completely unaware of our plan. This was entirely our decision. We stand firmly with Mandy. My pals then began testifying one after the other. They gave concrete examples of how Ashley had repeatedly tried to isolate and keep me out of social events and interfered intrusively in their friendships over the years. Ashley angrily said, "That's an outright lie. Mandy must have manipulated everyone to orchestrate this plan." She would not accept the facts that my friends were revealing. My parents stood still, like actors in a tragic movie, equally unprepared to face the truth of the situation. My mother's eyes were full of sorrow, and my father's face was pale. But these were tears of anger and dismay as their well-planned strategies fell apart in front of them, not of reflection or remorse. Ashley's fiancé watched the drama play out with a look of pure confusion on his face. He was clearly starting to see the full scope of the warped familial dynamics he had unintentionally gotten caught up in.
Life may throw you some unexpected curveballs, especially when family is involved. I never imagined that I would have to change the locks on my own house to keep my sister out. I'll begin from the beginning. My name is Emma, and Sabrina is my elder sister. As a child, Sabrina was always the golden child, the one who dared to dream big, took chances, and apparently understood how to enjoy life. She inherited our grandmother's home, married young, and had 2 lovely kids. In contrast, I chose what my family referred to as the safe route. With the $100,000 our grandmother left me as a down payment, I worked hard, saved money, and finally took out a mortgage to buy my own home. Sabrina would frequently remark, "Emma, you're so boring," at our family get-togethers. I just shrugged and said, "All you do is work and pay bills. Where's your sense of adventure?" I was pleased of my house, even if it wasn't as stunning as the property she acquired. I had my freedom, my calm, and my routine. I had no idea that my ostensibly dull existence would soon be completely upended. About 6 months ago, Sabrina exploded into my home one Sunday afternoon, her eyes glimmering with anticipation. "Emma, you won't believe the opportunity I found," she said as she hurried into my living room, hardly taking off her shoes. Even though I was cleaning for the weekend, I recognized the expression in her eyes. She had the same expression when she persuaded our parents to allow her go on a backpack around Europe when she was 18 and when she chose to have a destination wedding in Bali that almost caused our parents to go bankrupt. I put my cleaning goods aside and said, "What is it this time?" She started out by showing me some nice presentations on her phone. "There's this amazing medical startup," she said. "They're revolutionizing the healthcare industry. Tom and I are thinking of selling the house and investing in it. You should do the same." Wondering whether she was kidding, I looked at her. Sell my house? The one I'm still paying a mortgage on? To invest in a startup? She rolled her eyes and said, "Don't be such a scaredy cat. This is a guaranteed return. Triple the investment in just 1 year. You could buy an even bigger house after that." I tried to reason with her, saying, "Sabrina, I don't know anything about medical startups or investments, and I'm perfectly happy with my current house." She gave me the expression of disappointment and sympathy that I had come to expect over the years. "This is why you'll always be stuck in the same place, Emma. You're afraid to take risks to grow. You're just stagnant." The discussion swiftly descended into a dispute. Was I being called a loser by Sabrina for passing up this fantastic opportunity? She just chuckled when I voiced my worries as she was putting her family's sole house at jeopardy, especially since she had 2 young girls to consider. I went to see our parents the day following Sabrina's visit, in the hopes that they would help her see the light side of things. I ought to have been more aware. When I brought up the topic with Sabrina, Mom was in the kitchen preparing her famous lasagna. Mom responded, "Your sister told me about the investment opportunity," without even raising her gaze from her pot. "I think you should seriously consider it, Emma." Mom, she's talking about selling her only house, and putting all that money into some startup we know nothing about. Mom set down her spatula and looked at me, with the look I'd seen 1,000,000 times as a child, the one that suggested I was letting her down again. She groaned and asked, "Why can't you be more like your sister?" Sabrina is always striving for self-development. She's not afraid to take risks. But you? She raised her eyebrows. "You're just lazy, Emma. You don't want to change your life for the better." I made every effort to persuade Sabrina to change her mind over the course of the following few weeks. Numerous phone conversations we had all had the same conclusion. "Emma, this is my chance to get rich quickly," she would add. "Stop being such a party pooper. This is a legitimate investment opportunity." I questioned, "Have you even researched this company?" during one of our interviews. "Have you talked to a financial advisor?" Sabrina, however, refused to listen. She put the majority of the proceeds from the sale of her home in the medical business. While they waited for their dividends to come in, she and Tom used what was left to rent a property in the Maldives and take their girls there. Almost instantly, I was inundated with pictures of Sabrina on immaculate beaches, her girls playing in glistening seas, and sunset meals by the sea. A provocative statement was included with every photo. "Another day in paradise while the boring people stay home. Living my best life while some people are too scared to chase their dreams. This could have been you, sis, if you weren't such a chicken." Our parents also participated. Dad would exclaim, "You see, Emma?" as they looked at Sabrina's most recent Instagram postings at our monthly family dinners. "You could be there too if you weren't so careful all the time. Your sister really knows how to live," she'd say. "It's not too late to join her, you know. The investment opportunity is still open." While they looked at Sabrina's pictures and discussed her bravery and vision, I sat through these dinners in silence, eating my food. I occasionally questioned whether I was the only one who missed this incredible chance about which they were all so thrilled. However, I had a gut feeling that this was too good to be true. After 6 months, there were no more pictures from the Maldives. I initially believed that perhaps Sabrina had finally had enough of attempting to incite my jealousy. Then one morning, I came across the headlines. "Medical startup exposed as massive fraud scheme. Thousands of investors lose everything in healthcare scam. Startup founders flee country amid fraud investigation." As I read the articles, my hand began to shake. Sabrina had staked her entire future on this firm, which was nothing more than a complex swindle. Everything was gone, including our grandmother's house and all that money. Sabrina's phone was off when I tried to call her. Tom's as well. 3 days later, I finally received a text from Mom. Your sister's coming home. They didn't appear like the laid-back family in those beach pictures when they got at our parents' house. Sabrina's expensive clothing was swapped out for rumpled vacation attire, and the girls appeared worn out. In the hope that their investment would eventually pay off, they had tried to preserve their way of life in the Maldives with every last cent they had left over from the sale of their property. After 2 weeks, Mom gave me a call. Instead of the pleased tone she had used while boasting of Sabrina's courageous investment, her voice sounded strained. Emma, we need to talk, she addressed her. Can you come over? The home was in disarray when I got there, with toys all over the place, bags in corners that were still partially unpacked, and the sound of my nieces rushing upstairs. Mom had black bags beneath her eyes and was worn out. She said, I can't do this anymore, as she sank into a kitchen chair. Our house is too small for all of us. I haven't had a proper night's sleep in 2 weeks, and I'm constantly cooking and cleaning. Dad sat next to her, looking just as exhausted. Emma, we hate to ask this, but you have that big house. Sabrina entered the kitchen before they could finish, her eyes swollen and red from sobbing. The self-assured sister who had made fun of my uninteresting life decisions was no more. Someone I hardly recognized took her place. She cried, Please, Emma, and clutched my hands. Just for 3 months. That's all we need. Tom and I will find jobs, save up for a place of our own. I promise we won't stay longer than that. I gave my sister my whole attention. The pricey jewels and fashionable clothing had vanished. And so was the arrogant grin she'd shown in all those pictures at the beach. Her girls, who were usually vivacious, peered over the doorframe, silent and unsure. 3 months, I responded at last firmly, not a day more, and I mean it. She wrapped her arms around me and said, Thank you. Thank you. You won't regret this. I promise we'll have everything worked out by then. Having Sabrina's family stay at my place for a few weeks was an intriguing experience. I thought they would start looking for a job right away, but that didn't happen. Rather, my home became into a gathering place for Sabrina and Tom's pals, who came and went all the time. One evening, I discovered Sabrina and Tom in my living room, sipping wine with their pals. We need to decompress, she said. We also need to maintain our social connections. That's how you find good job opportunities. However, weeks went by and no employment were being offered as a result of these social relationships. They would still be in their jammies, organizing another get-together when I left for work each morning. They were networking with pals every evening when I got home. After a month, I eventually said, When are you actually going to start looking for work? Tom said, You're so uptight, Emma, as he browsed through his phone. We're still processing our trauma. We need time to gain strength. Both of them eventually obtained employment after a month of screening. I believed that they would begin saving money for their own house, and that this would be the pivotal moment. I was mistaken. Rather than putting their money aside, they began to spend it on what Sabrina referred to as maintaining their standard of living. Exotic foods that I couldn't pronounce were brought into my kitchen by pricey specialist food services. I can't just switch to regular food overnight, Sabrina said as she unpacked a delivery of groceries that cost $200. My body got used to certain things in the Maldives. I need to transition slowly. I felt it was time for a serious talk as the 3-month milestone drew near. In the kitchen, I discovered Sabrina using her phone to arrange another delivery of an unusual dinner. I thus began to speak in a more informal tone. Have you started looking for places to rent? Startled, she raised her head from her phone. Oh, come on, Emma. Don't be so pushy. We need more time to find the right place. More time? The agreement was 3 months. That was the deal. She scowled and asked, Why are you being so selfish? We need to find a place that's in the right school district for the girls. These things take time. And how many places have you actually looked at? Her quiet was sufficient response. My phone rang that evening. Mom was there. She stated accusingly, Sabrina told me you're trying to kick them out. I'm not kicking them out, Mom. The agreement was 3 months. It's been 3 months. She has small children, Emma. You can't just send them out on the street. What kind of sister are you? I felt a headache building on, so I closed my eyes. Fine. I said 3 more months, but that's it. This is the last extension they're getting. Mom added, "You're doing the right thing," in a softer tone. They're family, after all. Family. That term was beginning to seem less like a boon and more like a weight. I couldn't get rid of the sensation that I had just made a big mistake as I hung up the phone. I almost had a heart attack that month when the utility bills came in. The figures exceeded my average payment by more than 3 times. Not to mention the heating expenditures, energy use was over the roof, and water usage had increased dramatically. With my mind spinning from the computations I was completing, I sat at my kitchen table surrounded by bills. I was already making a sizable mortgage payment. Even though I had contributed $100,000 from my grandmother's estate as a down payment, the monthly installments were substantial. Now that there were 4 more people living with me, my utilities had grown to be yet another significant expenditure that I had not budgeted for. "Sabrina," I exclaimed one night while carrying money, "we need to talk about these." She took a quick look at the documents before turning back to her phone. "Oh, those look high." "They are high, very high." She looked at me as though I had advised her to give up oxygen. "I think it's reasonable that you and Tom help with them, considering you're both working now," she replied. "Remember, Emma, we're trying to save money for our own apartment. At the moment, we are unable to pay our expenses. In any case, everything will be ok. Quit worrying too much." But I had a lot to be concerned about. I would somehow end up working as an unpaid babysitter every weekday on top of the financial hardship. Every day was the same tiresome routine. After picking up the girls from school, our parents would keep an eye on them until I got off work. I would then travel to our parents' place to pick up my nieces, rather than returning home to unwind. I would bring them home, assist them with their schoolwork, prepare supper, and then wait. And hold on, and bide your time. Tom and Sabrina were expected home by 6:00 p.m., but they seldom ever got there before 9:00 p.m. "We apologize for being late," Sabrina would say, seeming much more put together than someone who had reportedly been stranded at work. She would remark that the meeting was lengthy. As I stayed at home babysitting their kids, I completely understood when I saw the Instagram posts their friends shared. Social outings, dinner parties, and happy hour cocktails, all of which included my sister and her husband. I questioned Sabrina about their intentions to move away again one very late night after they had finally made it home and the children were asleep. I informed her that the deadline for this prolonged stay was approaching. "Have you begun searching for locations?" She dismissively waved her hand. "Emma, everything will be well. You should really quit worrying about things." "Sabrina, that's not a response. Do you have any money saved at all?" She responded, "Of course we are." But she avoided looking into my eyes. "Please just have faith in me." "When did I ever disappoint you?" I kept my mouth shut so I wouldn't have to enumerate all the times she had let me down. Instead, while I sat surrounded by bills I couldn't afford and an uncontrollable fury, I saw her vanish upstairs to her room, my guest room in my house that I was paying for. 6 months. Mounting costs, constant babysitting, and seeing my sister and her husband treat my house like their own resort had all been part of the 6-month experience. It was time for a last discussion. One evening after the girls had gone to bed, I summoned them both into the living room. I sat across from them and said, "We need to talk. It will be precisely 6 months since you moved in next week. You must move out at that time, as we promised." I anticipated objections, justifications, and perhaps even pledges to begin looking for a house right now. I didn't anticipate laughing. "Get out," Sabrina continued to laugh as she spoke. "You can't be serious, Emma." "I'm being really serious. The 6-month arrangement was already twice as long as we had first discussed." After giving Tom a chuckle, Sabrina turned back to face me and said, "But why would we move? The girls adore this place. We've all moved in, and let's face it, You'll benefit from this as well. Good for Meili was shocked by what I was hearing. Consider it, Emma. You're gaining practical experience in family care. It's ideal preparation for when you eventually get married and have a family. Really, you need to be thanking us. Tom nodded in agreement, and I sat there dumbfounded into silence. Additionally, he said, extending his arms, this is a great house for a big family. We can all find plenty of space. Having the entire area for one person is pointless, isn't it? They carried on conversing, planning future room configurations, and talked about how to make the most of the available space. However, I had ceased to listen. Something that ought to have been clear from the beginning came to me at that instant. They had never planned to depart. They had been deceiving me the entire time with all of the delays, justifications, and assurances. I gave them the impression that they had won by nodding in agreement with anything they were saying, but a strategy was already taking shape in my mind. I contacted my workplace the next morning to arrange a vacation day for the following week. After that, I began looking into locksmiths. I got up early and dressed like I was going to work 7 days later. I waited until Tom and Sabrina had departed for work before taking action. At 9 a.m., the locksmith showed up. Sharp. I began working on the bedrooms while he worked on the locks. I was resolved to eradicate the 6 months of their lives that had proliferated across my home like an unwanted species. I packed everything of their possessions, including clothing, books, and toys, into cardboard boxes as I slowly went from room to room. They placed their pricey organic food in different cartons. They packed and wrapped their toiletries with care. The school materials and toys for the girls were labeled and arranged. Yes, I was furious, but I wasn't going to act cruelly. The locksmith completed installing the new locks by early afternoon, and I had piled boxes in my garage that contained any evidence of their presence in my home. I felt a weird mix of relief and guilt as I stood in my freshly cleaned guest room, staring at the empty closets and naked beds. Mom's calls began to ring on my phone as nighttime drew near. Her name kept showing on the screen as I watched it ring and ring. I didn't respond. Then the texts began to arrive. Where are you, Emma? The girls are waiting. This isn't humorous, Emma. Now come fetch the kids. Emma, pick up the phone. I waited as I put my phone on quiet. I heard them arrive into the driveway around 9:30 p.m. Children chatting, and the familiar sound of automobile doors slamming were present, followed by the sudden tinkling of keys against brand new locks. First came the bewilderment. I could hear them experimenting with various keys, perhaps believing they weren't inserting them properly. Tom's voice then emerged. What the devil? The knocking began quietly and soon became more loud. Emma. The voice of Sabrina echoed. The keys don't function. Come on in. I approached the door but chose not to open it. I changed the locks so the keys aren't working. After a startled quiet, there was an explosion. You watched Sabrina let out a scream. Now, open this door. No, I firmly answered. I'm finished. I've stopped paying twice for utilities. I'm done watching your kids for free. I'm tired of seeing you squander money while occupying my home without paying rent. I could hear the girls beginning to weep, and Sabrina took advantage of that right away. Their sobs were easily audible as she drew them closer to the door. Hear them out, Emma. Observe the way you treat your own nieces. How could you be so callous? With a trembling voice, I said, don't you dare use your children as emotional blackmail. You wouldn't have squandered away their house on a get-rich-quick scam if you were concerned about their stability. You wouldn't have avoided accountability for 6 months while I cleaned up your mess. Changing strategies, Sabrina said, just let us in. We can discuss this. I said, there's nothing to discuss. Your belongings are in the garage, packed in boxes. You are now free to take them. You are not entitled, Tom yelled. I was perfectly entitled. I live here. I pay for the house. The free home you've been residing in while deceiving me about getting a place of your own. For 20 more minutes, they stood outside, alternating between insults, entreaties, and threats. At last, I could hear them heading toward the garage. The process of packing everything into their car required many trips, interspersed with Tom's irate mumbling and Sabrina's loud grumbling. I believed everything was ended, but then my phone rang once more. Mom was there. "You have no right to expel your sister." Before I could even greet her, she yelled. "Who would harm their own family in this way? You should have Sabrina live with you. You must assist your sister." "Yes, Mom, I did assist her. For half a year. It's your time now. Let's see how you feel about them living with you for 6 months." The line died. I was both horrified and relieved as I stood in my peaceful, deserted home. For the first time in 6 months, I felt free to breathe in my own house, even though I knew this was far from finished. That night's aftermath was just what I had anticipated. My phone was inundated with calls and texts from family members I hadn't spoken to in years in a matter of days. Mom had apparently been busy promoting her version of what had happened. I initially attempted to give my version of events. I talked about the 6 months of financial hardship, the false promises, and the continual babysitting for hours on the phone with aunts, uncles, and cousins. However, it seemed like speaking into a blank wall. Mom's story of the cruel sister who threw her family out on the street had already convinced them. I eventually gave up defending myself. Give them time to consider their options. More valuable than their approbation was the fact that I felt at peace again. My buddy Rachel then contacted with some intriguing news around a month after everything had occurred. She tried not to giggle as she said, "You're not going to believe this. Sabrina was expelled by your parents. It seems that your mother was unable to cope with it any longer. Said that they never offered assistance and treated her home like a hotel." Does that sound familiar? I couldn't contain my laughter. My parents couldn't even get through one, and I had to live with it for 6 months. The real kicker, however, was when my cousin Jessica contacted me a few weeks later. For once, I was appreciative of her propensity to share whatever she heard, even if she had always been the family gossip. She said, "Emma, you must hear this. You know what they're doing with their money now that Sabrina and Tom have found an apartment? They are funding a company in space. Sabrina is visiting all of her relatives and explaining to them how this would make her wealthy. Claims that she will purchase a home twice as large as yours. Are you serious?" I touched my forehead with my hand. Following all of that, "Oh," Jessica said, "it gets better. She is attempting to get everyone to join her in investing. Claims that it's a ground floor opportunity, or a similar phrase. She brought all these sophisticated presentations on space mining or whatever to my place last week." I had a strange mixture of feelings, including sympathy, frustration, and a vague sense of relief. I'm glad I got them out of there before they could try to ensnare me in another of their plots. I no longer communicate with Sabrina. Although I understand that this distance is required, there are moments when I miss my nieces. Sometimes I see their pictures on social media. Sabrina continues to share their impending wealth and interesting investment prospects on social media. I'm done attempting to save her from myself, but I do hope she will ultimately realize things out. Regarding Mom, we haven't spoken since that evening, but I've heard via the family rumor that she's been singing a different tune lately. Thank you again, Jessica. Jessica informed me that your mother had truly defended you when she was visiting Aunt Linda's last week. Said that she now comprehends the reasons for your actions. She seems to have realized how hard it is to share your space with someone who don't respect your limits after living with Sabrina. When I heard it, I simply grinned. People occasionally need to go through something firsthand in order to get your point of view. Maybe Mom will change her mind, and I'll be here if she does. However, it will be on my terms this time.